What was supposed to be a day of national mourning in Nairobi, well, it spiraled into violence. Today, we're going to break down exactly how the farewell for a political giant, Raila Odinga, led to such chaos and tragedy on the streets. 4. Just let that number sink in for a second. 4 people were killed. So the big question is, how does a public viewing for a beloved leader turn so deadly? To figure that out, we've got to trace the events that led to this really tragic outcome. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Nairobi, Kenya's capital. You have thousands of people gathering to pay their respects to this political icon. But what started as a tribute, well, it was about to escalate into a fatal confrontation. And here's the thing. These deaths were a direct result of security forces firing shots and tear gas into these huge crowds of mourners at the city's main stadium. I mean, this wasn't some small skirmish. This was a large-scale, deadly incident.
All of this just begs the question, who was this man? Who was at the center of this tragedy, whose death could provoke such an overwhelming, such a chaotic response?
Well, the man at the center of it all was Raila Odinga, a real titan of Kenyan politics. And look, to understand the chaos, you first have to understand his really complex legacy. So Odinga passed away at 80, and he'd been a major figure in Kenyan politics for decades. His career was pretty much defined by his powerful role in the opposition, and also by a series of pretty surprising and, sometimes controversial political alliances. I mean, his career was a total roller coaster. You're talking about a former political prisoner, an unsuccessful presidential candidate, not once but 5 times. And he even served as prime minister. Then, in a final twist that nobody saw coming, he made a political pact with his longtime rival, President Ruto. This whole journey of struggle and these shifting alliances, it's absolutely key to understanding the passion of his supporters. So how did a day meant for mourning just completely descend into this widespread unrest? Let's walk through the timeline of how this day spiraled out of control. Okay, so it all started early in the morning. Thousands of supporters are gathering on the streets of Nairobi, and you can just feel the tension in the air. Pretty soon, mourners actually stormed the international airport. They interrupted the official ceremony and shut down operations for 2 whole hours. From there, the crowds tried to breach Parliament, which was the original viewing spot. But the final, fatal flashpoint, that happened at the main stadium, when a huge crowd broke through a gate, and that's what prompted the deadly response. So let's break down what happened at the stadium because it was swift and just so tragic. The crowd breaches the gate. At first, soldiers fired warning shots in the air, but then security forces fired actual shots and tear gas into the crowd. The result? 4 people killed and scores more injured. The mourners scattered, and the stadium was just left deserted. Seeing this level of confrontation, it makes you wonder, right? Why would thousands of people risk so much just to mourn him? Well, the answer really lies in his powerful legacy. Yeah, the kind of passion we saw on display that day, it wasn't random. It was rooted in decades of political struggle and in a really deep personal connection that he had with millions of Kenyans. So you've got 2 things going on here. For his political supporters, he was a champion, a guy who they believe was repeatedly denied the presidency because of electoral fraud. But the devotion ran even deeper than that, especially among his Luo community in Western Kenya. You have to understand, this is a place where political identity and cultural heritage are really intertwined. And that blend, that mix of political grievance and cultural identity, it forged an incredibly powerful bond. And what's really amazing is that the impact of his legacy is generational. I mean, think about it. Many of the mourners out there on the streets weren't even born yet when Kenya became a multi-party democracy back in 1991. That was a struggle where Odinga was a key figure, and yet these young people still felt a deep connection to that fight. This quote from a university student, Felix Ambani Unek, just captures it perfectly. He said, "He fought tirelessly for multi-party democracy, and we are enjoying those freedoms today because of his struggle." So you see, for this younger generation, Odinga isn't just some historical figure. To them, he's the architect of the very freedoms they enjoy today. So what happened in Nairobi really highlights this volatile mix of grief and political frustration, all boiling over at once. And it forces us to ask a really tough question. When a nation mourns a complex hero like this, where is the line between grief and unrest?